Our emotional, psychological, and social well being all contributes to our mental health. It has an impact on how we think, feel, and act. It also influences how we deal with stress, interact with people, and make good decisions. Mental health is essential throughout life, from childhood to adolescence to maturity. The World Health Organization estimates that 450 million people worldwide have a mental health problem, and that 25% of the population will suffer from mental disease at some point. Now that we have established that mental health is an important element overall to health well being, it's often overlooked in this region of the world. In Nigeria, mental health is not supported by the government or society, even though it contributes to the overall wellness of a person. The Lunacy Ordinance, Nigeria's first mental health legislation, was passed in 1916. These laws were revised in 1958 to provide medical practitioners and judges with the authority to detain a person suffering from mental illness. These laws, renamed the Lunacy Act of 1958, have not been modified since. This regulation is now old and outdated, reflecting a time in human history when not only was mental health widely misunderstood, but also the treatment of persons with mental health care requirements were both harsh and ineffective. A mental health bill was introduced in Nigeria's National Assembly in 2003, but was sadly removed in April 2009 after receiving minimal funding and making little progress for more than 6 years. According to 2019 survey on mental health in Nigeria conducted by African Polling Institute API, most respondents were aware that they have mental disorder, but they recognize it commonly caused by drug abuse, possession of evil spirits, and brain sickness. The majority of patients are taken to a prayer house for spiritual interventions. This is called faith healing, a method of treating illness through the exercise of faith rather than medical methods. This is a common practice throughout Nigeria. Patients and their families frequently seek aid from traditional or faith based healers in Nigeria due to the large treatment gap in the mental health industry. Just take a look at this story that shows why the gap is detrimental to people living with serious mental illness. An article from Devex.com by Kimi Faladone titled, "Can Traditional Faith Healers Fill Nigeria's Mental Health Gap?" provides a touching story on Tade, who suffered from schizophrenia. Tade was 27, married with a son when he started walking long distances with no destination in mind. His mother was in church one evening and her ex-husband called her to tell her that her son had been roaming Computer Village in Ikeje, where he sold hardware. She was able to reach Tade, whose name had been changed to protect his privacy, on the phone and help him find his way home to her. She stated some things had changed about him. His speech was not coherent, he was looking around strangely, and said some people were chasing him. That's when I knew something was wrong. At this point, his mother looked away, sighed, smiled, sighed again at the weight of the memories. This problem started around 2016, she finally said, sitting at their family home in Ifo, Ogun State, with Tade and his sister Banke, whose name had also been changed. He wore a white shirt, head slightly bowed, as though he's listening to a stranger's story. It would take 6 long years after that phone call to get a diagnosis from a psychiatrist. It was schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a mental disorder characterized by significant impairments in the way reality is perceived. The Nigerian population, estimated to be living with schizophrenia, is about 1.86 million. Dr. Abdul Malik, consultant psychiatrist at University College Hospital in Abadan, states, When people have mental health challenges, it's assumed to be a spiritual problem. And so, first place they'll go is usually a traditional or faith based healer. One of the reasons why Nigeria is so reluctant against taking mental health seriously is because usually the conclusion they will come to is that it is spiritual and it can be healed through prayer. And Nigeria is a very religious based country. So a lot of medical professionals can't really fight against society the way they want to because Nigeria's society is very religious. Since my parents immigrated from Nigeria, I wanted to get their perspective on how their generation dealt with mental health and what they looked at it as.
If I may go first, I will approach it, rather, I will address it from two perspectives. The first is from my generation perspective, and the second is my perspective as an individual who grew up in Nigeria, who has also spent time here in the United States. Different the countries at different developmental stages. People of my generation, the issue of mental health was not as acceptable as it is now when we grew up. It was not something that was so commonly discussed or taught in school. Maybe researches was not too much available to make us understand that it was a serious issue. So sometimes we saw it differently at somebody who either was hit by some kind of gods, little g, or some people who have some kind of misfortune, or maybe something that could be inherent in a family, So we didn't really know what that is, a big issue like it is right now. So that is on the side of growing up. Then making a comparison between Nigeria and United States, Nigeria is a little bit backwards in terms of accepting the challenges mental health posed to individual and how severe it could be. As a little advanced as Nigeria has become since I grew up, it was worse when I was younger. No one ever considered it a serious thing, and no one ever cared to seek for real therapy or help or support for these people. They were literally considered people that were mad, I'm telling you, and they were treated like that. So those are the two areas, my two submission to your question.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. When I grew up, I had no idea about mental illness at all. I never heard it. If all of a sudden somebody becomes crazy, we are thinking, oh, is the Obanje or the gods or the water gods took the person or knocked him into madness or something, or he has done something to the gods of the land, either gods of Yam or gods of the god sun, or any type of deity can knock people into madness and take over their soul. And then there would never been a time they are taken to the hospital because it's never considered a medical thing or there could be any intervention. It's like what they do is they will take that person to either native doctor to do some incantations and make offerings to the gods or make sacrifices to the gods or Wanje spirit or water god spirit or goddess spirit, or they take the person to the prayer houses in the name of not going to the tradition for healing, but you're going to God for healing. Then you take them to prayer houses where they will be beaten or flogged morning and night, or put in chains if they are violent, and they will be praying over them, and all that they will be suffering. They will put them out to suffer because the devil is in them. So very bad. But most of them, well, just a few of them will remain in that facility for a long time, and the families will abandon or may abandon, or the church people will say, we can find, we can help, or they've been there for many months, and the family will come and take them back, and they will stay in their family home and considered to be insane. So yeah, that's how the story goes. And sometimes they may recover if their brain becomes, good to them or something. They may recover, but not totally. But then some of them may not recover, and they wander away and disappear or die away.
So, the first hump of bettering Nigeria's mental health care system is getting past the stigma that it has on Nigeria's society. Instead of treating it as a spiritual problem, Nigeria needs to start treating it as a medical problem. The second hump to get past is financing. Aside from the costly medical expenses, and given the country's rising poverty rate, other issues afflict Nigeria's mental health system. Data on mental health practitioners is scarce. There are only 250 psychiatrists registered with the Nigerian Association of Psychiatrists. Meanwhile, 1 in every 4 Nigerians are said to suffer from mental disorder. In Nigeria, a country of approximately 200 million people, there are only 8 governmented neuropsychiatric facilities. Going back to Tade's story, Tade's mother contemplated taking him to the doctor, but she couldn't afford 150,000 naira registration and deposit fee for the neuropsychiatric hospital in Aro, Ogun State. There was no support from anywhere, Banke Tade's sister said. That's why we went traditional. It was cheaper and it was more accessible. When you're desperately in need of help and the actual solution is so far fetched, you just have to go for something.
The major reason there is lack of fund. We don't have money. We don't have money to take care of business. And then because of that, it affects other areas such as the mental health department.
Also, the graduates that are graduating from medical school, nobody goes to, most people, going into medical, like psychiatry in Nigeria is non-lucrative, because you get all that training and all that, nobody comes. You don't see anybody, you don't put it, nobody shows up. You can't even, make a meal out of your profession because the population don't believe it. The population are not showing up. The population cannot pay for it, something they think that they can either pray out or wait out on.
Unfortunately, mental health is not financed and supported enough by the government, and due to the stigma against mental health, it looks like there doesn't need to be a change. But there does. For Nigeria to have an effective and cost effective way to incorporate mental health services into public health, there needs to be a reform on outdated existing laws and the creation of new policies that will see the formation of a board for mental health. Their mission being protecting and supporting people with mental health in Nigeria. There is an urgent need for collaborative effort between government, policymakers, and international organizations in order to implement the recommendations for better, more accessible, and more affordable mental health. To service the population's mental health and well-being, to promote mental health care services, and to advocate for people to see mental health professionals and psychiatrists. The good thing is that change is happening slowly but surely. Dr. Abdul from the DevX article states that this year we launched Project Hope to help homelessness with mental health challenges. A diagnosis done at the University of College in Ibadan, and most times the result comes out as schizophrenia. The foundation takes care of the admission fees and tries to reconnect the individual with their families. Dr. Abdul states, so far we've picked up 5 persons off the street and hope for more public support. They are working in partnership with the State Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Women and Social Welfare with the permission of law enforcement. However, financial support does pose a major challenge. In terms of local funding, there are no big donors. Also, Tade is actually still undergoing treatment and is hopeful. He plans to pivot into digital marketing at some point, but for now, he's just focusing on his mental health and he looks forward to seeing his son again. I hope this video brought more information to the mental health system in Nigeria, and I thank you for listening. Please, if you can, donate to Project Hope. I'll put the donation in the description. Thank you so much.